I'm going to tell you a story. At first, it's gonna sound ridiculous, but the longer I talk, the more rational it's going to appear. Because in today's video, we'll introduce you to an extraterrestrial species with time-looping powers from the 2014 sci-fi film Edge of Tomorrow. Sounds pretty crazy, right? It gets crazier when they invade Earth and begin to wipe out humanity. But all thanks to Major William Cage, aka Tom Cruise, and soldier Rita Vrataski, played by Emily Blunt, that the mimics failed in their plan of taking over Earth. But did they really? Let's find out in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. What are the mimics, and how did they invade Earth? Dr. Noah Carter, who's a particle physicist and microbiologist and knows more about the mimics than anyone else in the movie, describes these aliens as a perfectly evolved world organism. He said there could be millions of these species floating around in the cosmos, riding on asteroids, looking for planets to crash land, and then hijack them by exterminating the dominating species. In the movie, it's explained that the mimics landed on Earth when asteroids crashed in Germany, and within 5 years, they have butchered most of humanity. The United Defense Forces is a global military organization created to combat the mimics, but with each fight, they lose more and more soldiers, while the mimics continue to conquer most of continental Europe. Interestingly, the mimics operate like a hive mind and have the power to rewind time whenever one of their alphas die, so that they get to correct that in the next timeline. We'll talk about the mimics' time-looping powers and how it's the Omega that controls all of them in just a bit. But before that, let's take a look at the species' complicated biology. The mimics somewhat have a biomechanical structure. Their design is fluid and aerodynamic, enabling them to attack at breakneck speed. The mimics have a central head with a mouth and eyes, but the rest of their body is just tentacles, menacingly dark tentacles that allow them to run, crawl, climb, and swim really fast. The mimics are kind of like a hybrid between cephalopods and predatory creatures. With the tentacles, these aliens can also dig into the ground, move under the soil, and launch sudden attacks against their victims by emerging out of the surface. In the battleground, Sergeant Farrell describes the mimics as mean as hell and thick as grass because the ground shakes and a cloud of smoke is created when a swarm of mimics charge towards their enemies. These aliens are lethal combatants and appear to have an armored exoskeleton, which makes it extremely hard to kill them. How do the mimics manipulate time? The movie explains a mimic hive is typically composed of 3 ranks. The Omega, that is the brain and controls them all, the Alphas, which serve as the commanders of the Omega, and the lower-ranking drones, which are the dispensable soldier mimics. The drone mimics measure around 4 feet in height and have the ability to alter their form by extending their tentacles to attack their prey. The drones have an orange bioluminescent glow as if they are burning from inside and possess the ability to throw fiery projectiles from their tentacles. The drones are the most common type of mimics and lack the time-manipulating abilities of the Alphas and the Omega. Now, the Alphas are extremely rare. Dr. Carter estimates that there's about 1 Alpha in every 6.18 million mimics. They act as the nervous system of the hive mind, connecting the drones to the Omega, and hence the Alphas are extremely crucial for a mimic hive, and the Omega cannot afford to lose its Alphas. That's exactly why whenever an Alpha is killed, the Omega resets time to 1 day before, so that in the next outcome, they know the enemy strategy and the Alpha survives. So basically, time is reset with the death of every Alpha. The Alphas are much larger than a regular drone mimic and have a ghostly blue bioluminescent glow. The angular eyes on the Alphas are a lot more prominent, and they come with a predatory mouth filled with sharp teeth. Usually the mimics let out mechanical screeches, but the Alphas' battle cries are a lot more shrieky and bone-chilling. Here's another interesting trait of the Alphas. If a human is doused in their black gooey blood, then their time manipulating powers are passed on to the person, which means every time the person dies, time is reset to the day before, which also means that the Alpha and the human become part of the same time loop. However, the human loses his time looping ability if they receive a blood transfusion, which was the case with both Rita Vrataski and William Cage. Now, let's talk about the mastermind, the Omega. This superorganism is gigantic in size and has a spherical central core, kind of like a throbbing brain with a blue internal glow. This spherical center is guarded by a series of petal-like tentacles which open and close moves very slowly in sync with the brain's throbbing. This gargantuan being doesn't have any combat abilities of its own and relies on hiding to protect itself from being detected and destroyed. And it seems that the Omega prefers to remain hidden underwater, as was seen in the movie. Its biggest power is its temporal ability, with which it can turn back time. Then, with the knowledge of how the enemies are going to attack in the future, the Omega devises preemptive moves and tries different battle strategies till the mimics become victorious over their enemies. The Omega is highly intelligent and a prompt battle strategist. Another trait of the Omega is that it can manipulate the visions of those humans who are infected with an alpha's blood. It can track down the human in real time and send them false visions playing with their mind. What was Operation Downfall, and how did humanity fight back? Edge of Tomorrow begins in 2015, 5 years after the Mimics have invaded Earth and have taken over most of Europe. NATO militaries have brought together armies to create a huge militia called the United Defense Forces, but they are losing more and more soldiers every day. At the beginning of the film, we learn that the UDF have marked their first victory against the Mimics at Verdun, and the credits go to the decorated soldier Rita Vrataski, who killed hundreds of Mimics herself. She is now known as the Angel of Verdun, and her victory prompted the mass production of the exosuit that she was wearing. Created by the UDF, the exosuits are combat jackets that enhance a soldier's abilities on the battlefield. So inspired by the victory at Verdun, and with the newfound confidence of the combat jackets, General Brigham plans to execute Operation Downfall, which is a multi-front invasion of the mimic-infested Europe to relieve pressure on the forces in the Eastern Front, allowing the Chinese and Russian troops to push back the mimics into the center. General Brigham, the UDF commander, explains that the forces will launch the attacks from France, the Mediterranean, and Scandinavia, and the entire might of the UDF will confront the mimics in Middle Europe. General Brigham also summons UDF Public Affairs Officer Major William Cage to the UDF headquarters in Britain and orders him to cover the first invasion of Operation Downfall with his camera crew by being present at the battlefield on the breaches of France the next day. Now, Cage has zero battle experience and the sight of blood makes him faint, so he tries to blackmail Brigham into getting out of the mission, but he gets arrested and stripped of his rank and gets demoted to a private and is shipped off to the Heathrow UDF base to join the first wave as infantry along with a group of misfits called the J Squad. To his horror, Cage is deployed with the 1st Airborne troops on the French coastline, but the mimics, with their time-looping powers, had anticipated the invasion and were already waiting to slaughter the UDF forces. The entire troop dies and so does Cage, but before that, he manages to blast off an Alpha and gets smeared in and gagged by its blood, unaware of its time-looping powers. Cage opens his eyes to find himself waking up at Heathrow base just like the day before, and as the day goes on with familiar events, Cage realizes he is reliving the same day again. He is deployed with the airborne forces again, and he dies again, only to wake up at the Heathrow base again. Cage realizes he has become a part of a time loop, and he goes into battle every day trying to save his fellow soldiers, and meanwhile getting better at killing the mimics with each passing loop. During one such attempt, he saved the life of Rita Vrataski, who mysteriously tells him, "Come find me when you wake up," before dying under an exploding dropship. As Cage dies and wakes up at the Heathrow base again one day prior to the invasion, he tracks down Rita and explains what's been happening to him. Rita instantly believes him and takes him to a secret room along with Dr. Carter. Rita explains she possessed the same ability after killing an Alpha and getting drenched in its blood, and that's how she scored the victory at Verdun. Rita lost her powers when she was wounded and received a blood transfusion. Dr. Carter explains that the Omega is hiding somewhere in Europe and is controlling the Mimic's army from its nest, and hence, Cage must become Rita's guide into tracking down the Omega with his visions. In the meantime, Rita trains Cage in combat, and they go into battle several times, getting killed on the beach and returning to the time loop again and again. After multiple tries, Rita and Cage are able to reach mainland from the beach, and they seek shelter in a dilapidated house with a helicopter. When Rita tries to fly the helicopter, Cage reveals they have been here many times before, and they die every time. Cage has meanwhile grown fond of Rita and struggles to see her die time and again. So in the next time loop, he decides to venture out alone looking for the Omega, and he has received a vision of the Omega hiding in a dam in the Bavarian Alps. There, Cage is ambushed by an army of drone mimics and an Alpha who does not attempt to kill Cage, but tries to bleed him out. Cage realizes the Alpha is attempting to steal his time-looping powers through exsanguination, and he willingly dies by drowning, retaining his ability. Waking up at the Heathrow base, Rita and Cage determine that the mimics allow Rita to win at Verdun to give the humans humans a false sense of confidence. It was actually a trap. The Omega wants the UDF to attack with its full force, just like Operation Downfall, so that they can exterminate the full might of the UDF once and for all. This is when Dr. Carter mentions he created a prototype transponder device that can ascertain the Omega's exact location if it's injected into an Alpha or a human infected with an Alpha's blood. But the prototype is locked away at General Brigham's office, who dismissed the idea at the time and deported Dr. Carter to be a UDF mechanic. Rita and Cage infiltrate the UDF headquarters in Whitehall and repeatedly persuade General Brigham into giving up the transponder, and several time loops later they finally succeed. While escaping the headquarters, Rita stabs Cage with the transponder when Cage is able to track down the Omega's real hiding spot, under the Louvre Museum in Paris. But their car crashes with an armored UDF soldier and they lose consciousness. Cage, who has lost a lot of blood, wakes up in a UDF medical ward to realize that he has received a transfusion and lost his time-looping ability. Cage and Rita break out of the ward and decide to take on the Omega that very night, which is the night before Operation Downfall begins. Cage convinces the RAG team of J-Squad to join the mission, and they fly unauthorized planes from the Heathrow base to Paris. On their way, the helicopters are ambushed by drone mimics, and Cage and Rita crash land into the Louvre. As they make their way through the rifts and cracks and fall several levels below, they discover the Omega hiding in the water-filled subterranean realm under the Louvre when they are also chased by an Alpha. Rita gives a farewell kiss to Cage and decides to go after the Alpha. She leaves her grenade belt with Cage and parts with the words, "I wish I had the chance to know you better." As Cage dives into the water to blast off the Omega with grenades, the Alpha quickly returns after killing Rita. The Alpha delivers a fatal blow to Cage, but he has already primed the grenades and dropped the belt in the direction of the Omega's throbbing brain. As the grenades blast off, the Omega explodes and cripples the entire Mimic army across Europe, who instantly become lifeless. Meanwhile, drowning in the water, Cave absorbs the Omega's blood, getting the superorganism's chronokinetic abilities back again. William Cage opens his eyes again, and this time, he wakes up 2 days before Operation Downfall is scheduled. But things are different now. He is now headed toward General Brigham's office, who announces in a press conference that a mysterious and massive energy surge in Paris has led to the extermination of the Mimics on Earth. Russian and Chinese troops are moving across Europe without resistance, and tomorrow, the UDF will march to the Western Front to confirm this victory for humanity. The film ends with William Cage walking through the training center to meet Rita Vrataski, who has no idea who Cage is, and asks him, "What do you want?" How did Major Cage get stuck in a time loop? Well, as we told you, Major Cage tried to talk himself out of Operation Downfall but failed, and was sent to the waterfront along with the first wave of troops. Cage, who has never been on the battlefield and never operated the UDF exosuit, was struggling to get the safety on his suit off while the Mimics finished off his friends. He got his suit in battle mode just in time to save his own life and was rejoicing in the victory when an Alpha crawled out of the sands to command the drone Mimics. At first, Cage decided to lay low, but when the Alpha switched its attention towards him, Cage threw a claymore mine in its direction, disintegrating the Alpha. The Alpha Mimic's thick, dark blood splattered all over Cage, granting him time-looping powers. Just after dying on the battlefield, Cage wakes up at the Heathrow base the day before, beginning his time-looping journey. These powers also establish a connection with the Omega, as Dr. Carter explained. Cage now has access to the Omega's brain. Later, when Rita injects the transponder into Cage, his eyes go completely black till the time he stays connected with the Omega. Cage eventually loses this power, but in the end, when he is engulfed in the Omega's blood underwater, Cage opens his eyes, and the white in his eyes go completely black again. What happens in All You Need Is Kill? The Doug Liman-directed film Edge of Tomorrow is actually based on the Japanese novel All You Need Is Kill by Hiroshi Sakurazaka, published in 2004. The movie makes several tweaks to the novel's storyline, but the basic plot of the Mimics invading Earth and the protagonist getting stuck in a time loop is very much inspired by the book. The protagonist of All You Need Is Kill is a new UDF recruit called Keiji Kirya, who dies on his first day on the battlefield. But before getting killed, Keiji slaughters an unusual looking mimic, and the next thing he knows is he's still alive and transported back to the previous day. Realizing he has become part of a time loop, he attempts to get closer to the decorated soldier Rita Vrataski and her mechanic Carter, using his knowledge of the war. Just like in the movie, in the novel too, Rita fights with a massive axe instead of firearms, and Keiji gets one too from Carter. Rita soon discovers that Keiji is a time-looping soldier and confides in him that she too experienced this time-warping phenomenon after being exposed to a dying antenna mimic. She explains how the mimic species operate as a hive with one single nexus organism controlling the antenna mimics and possess the ability to reset time upon their death to change the outcome in the next timeline. Rita once escaped the loop by killing the antenna mimics and then the nexus, and Keiji must do the same. They try time and again, but are killed every single time by the mimics, restarting the loop. On their 160th loop, Rita suddenly attacks Keiji, explaining her reason that all the time warping has modified their minds, making them similar to the antenna mimics, and that one of them must die before killing the nexus to stop this alien invasion once and for all. The two engage in a battle, which ends with Keiji mortally wounding Rita. Keiji, who had grown fond of Rita, sits by her side in her final moments before proceeding to finish off the mimics and the nexus, putting an end to the mimic menace. The novel ends with Keiji being celebrated as a war hero, but only he knows the sacrifice that went into saving humanity from the predatory aliens. Keiji silently honors Rita Vrataski by painting his war armor blue. What is Edge of Tomorrow's Omega, and how is it connected to the mimics? In Edge of Tomorrow, humans thought that they were fighting swarms of mimics across Europe, but they were really battling against just one enemy, the Omega. After crash landing on Earth, the Omega lodged itself deep into the Louvre Museum, and within days started operating its army of drones and alphas, eventually overtaking most of Europe over a period of 5 years. The Omega is connected to all mimics like a hive mind. That's why when the Omega was killed by Major Cage's grenades in the end, all the mimics across Earth also shrieked and died. The drone mimics are its soldiers, and the alphas are its eyes and ears, and hence when an alpha dies, the Omega resets time with the knowledge of what happens in the future. The Omega has used this ability to turn back the clock countless times to win the war against humans across Europe by trying different battle strategies until the mimics win. However, it's never really explained in the movie whether the Omega creates new timelines every time or simply alters the same one each time. What is the curse of the mimics in Edge of Tomorrow? The mysterious origin and predatory nature of the mimics have led to several fan theories, with some suggesting that the time-looping ability of these aliens is not a power, but a curse. As per the theory, the mimics have arrived on Earth to break free of the time-looping curse by transferring the power to another vessel, this time a human named William Cage. In the film, Cage overhears a bunch of old folks discussing that the mimics have invaded Earth either for the minerals or for its water sources. But what if they're just looking to transfer their temporal ability into another host who can hold on to it till the mimics are completely destroyed, freeing them from reliving their cursed fate repeatedly? That way, there will be no mimic left for the power to revert to, even if the human receives a blood transfusion. At the end of Edge of Tomorrow, William Cage becomes that person, as he now has the time-looping powers, but the mimics are destroyed. The mimics are finally free from their curse. That's quite a theory, right? Marvelous verdict. So we'll leave you with that thought, and you can tell us about your own theories in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, people. If you liked our video, please give us a shout out and watch this space for more such content. And if you ever get stuck in a time loop, reliving the same day over and over again, you know who to look for when you wake up the next time. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.